touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.
Welcome into another episode of Mac and Mose. Andy McNamara joined by the editor-in-chief of GoDucks.com, Rob Mosley. We are here to wrap up week number 1 of Oregon's college football season. The Ducks taking on Eastern Washington, and they were victorious in this one. A lot of points scored. The final score was 61-42 Oregon. Kind of a new look offense a little bit for Oregon in this one with a new quarterback in Vernon Adams. Just one starter, surprisingly, from the 2014 season opener on offense. That was Dwayne Stanford. I think people might forget just how much mix and match there was throughout the year last year with injuries and other factors. And this was essentially a new offense with a new quarterback, and it still looked like Oregon football.
Yeah, still playing fast. I think there was only one touchdown drive longer than 3 minutes, which was the last one. One scoring drive longer than 3 minutes, which is the last one of the game. They're scoring in 2 minutes, sometimes less. 2:20 probably is the average drive time on scoring drives, and that's what you're used to seeing for the Oregon offense. And for me, that was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, based on the scrimmages, I was expecting Vernon Adams to take a little bit of time to get up to that level of tempo, but I think the fact he is a veteran, and a guy like Matt Haggerty, the center is so key to tempo, and that Matt Haggerty is a veteran who, in Haggerty's case, has been here all summer too, and kind of getting used to how fast the Ducks want to play. He obviously eased the transition, and let's be honest, I think if the Ducks wanted to, they could have scored about 90 in that game. It was just a matter of kind of how much they needed to win. I think you'd have liked to see, particularly in hindsight, you'd have liked to see the defense make a few more stops so that they could have gotten Vernon Adams and some other guys out of there a little earlier. But defense had its challenges with an offense that, as we mentioned last week, was pretty adept at throwing the ball.
Vernon Adams Jr., admittedly, I've been drinking his Kool-Aid since probably the first practice, really, when he's slinging the ball around and you're like, wow, this guy's good. Honestly, though, I didn't think he was better. Better way to put it, he was better than I expected on the field once the lights went on and game time. He just seems so comfortable. He seems to have a great pocket presence. Even though he's a guy that can run, he senses things around him. The offensive line did a tremendous job of protecting him. The running backs also, the tight ends, that we saw a lot of 2 tight end sets for Oregon in this one. So they did a nice job of giving him some time, but he just looked so comfortable. And like I said before, it looked like Oregon football. The tempo, everything was very familiar.
You're standing in the middle of Autzen Stadium, 50+ thousand people looking down, watching your every move. A guy like me would wilt and run and hide. A guy like Vernon Adams, it just feels at home on that stage, I think, and just doesn't feel any extra pressure. In fact, rises to it, thrives in that spotlight. So it'll be interesting as the Ducks move forward in the season and play games with a lot more attention, including one coming up at Michigan State, kind of how he responds to those atmospheres as well. But he seems like a guy who's going to be pretty unflappable, really going to be a guy who thrives in those situations.
Well, we'll get to Oregon's defense in a minute, but you mentioned, it would have been nice to get some players off the field, get some other players in earlier on offense, had the Ducks been able to put a little bit more separation between themselves and Eastern Washington. This game was never in jeopardy, but the Eastern Washington wasn't going away. They were scoring, so a chance to run your horses out there and see what you have. Royce Freeman, he carried it a lot more than I thought he would in a typical opener against an FCS opponent. 21 carries, 180 yards, 3 touchdowns, and just looked like a man determined out there.
Yeah, I thought after halftime, and I certainly can't blame him, I didn't think anybody was real eager to go tackle Royce. He gets such a head of steam going. He's so big and fast, and the force that he arrives with at the end of a carry when somebody tries to tackle him is pretty intimidating. And again, if you give him 40 carries, he might have run for 400 yards in that game if that's what the Ducks had needed, because it came. I think there came to be a point where it was like, hey, you can give it to Royce as much as you want. He's going to run the ball down the field. You're going to be able to score. Points aren't going to be the issue here. It is going to be a matter of just getting a few stops and getting some breathing room there.
A lot of talk in August about the absence of Thomas Tyner due to shoulder surgery in the offseason. He's not going to be able to likely contribute this year, but the backups to Royce Freeman, Kenai Benoit, who really solidified his role in spring ball and then carried that into fall camp in terms of just his improvement. Tony Brooks-James, a redshirt freshman, got to see his first action. Taj Griffin, a true freshman, ended up with the longest run of any Oregon running back at 61 yards. Probably should have scored. Should have been a longer run even. But it's an embarrassment of riches at running back once again for Oregon.
Yeah, Taj is incredibly quick and elusive in tight spaces. I'm not sure he actually has the top end speed of even his brother Ty or some other guys. So, but that may not be the last
That's
time.
a challenge, Taj.
May not be the last time he gets caught from behind, but nobody's going to be shiftier in a phone booth than he is. But Kenai Benoit is a guy I was really happy for because he really reshaped his body this year. He tried to get into his playbook more because really assignments have been holding him back as well too. And I was happy to see him. You get guys who are good spring game players and who are good practice players. And over the years, there's been guys, and you wonder, is this going to translate? Is this going to carry over? I wasn't certain that was going to carry over for Kenai, and so to see that happen was really cool because he's put in the work.
Coach Helfrich said that he runs weird.
Yeah.
That was his quote. And, because he's kind of angular and he darts and ducks and he just moves differently probably than Royce or a traditional running back.
His balance is really good. There were a couple times he got hit and he was able to maintain his footing and put a hand down, even, bounce off a defender who was in his way and keep his footing. So, yeah, I mean, if that's weird, hey, whatever, roll with it.
Credit to Eastern Washington. We knew their offense was good. They were without their former starter, Vernon Adams Jr., because he was on the Oregon sideline, but tons of talent. Cooper Kupp, who was their #1 receiver the last 2 years, set Autzen Stadium records for catches and yards. He was, in space once he got the ball in his hands. Not the biggest guy, but incredibly elusive, very tough, really hard to tackle and bring down. He gave a lesson to Ugo Amadi on one of his touchdowns where he just sort of fought him off for the last 10 or 12 yards of the run.
Kid. Yeah.
Exactly. So very talented group, #1 offense in the FCS. And we told you last week on Mac and Mose that they were going to score points. So you should have been prepared for that if you're one of those fans that was a little bit disappointed in Oregon's overall defensive performance.
Yeah, as we talked about last week, when you're talking about young cornerbacks, there's going to come a time when they're going to have to learn some tough lessons. They're going to give up some plays, and that happened in this game. So you just hope that their confidence is still intact and they're able to bounce back from that and learn from that and use it as a positive and move forward from it. And I think that is something to watch moving forward, to see how Arion Springs, how Chris Cisse is, how confident do they remain? Because I think coming out of camp, when you're going against the Oregon's offense and you know what's coming and you're making a bunch of plays, my notebook's filled with those guys making plays. It's, oh yeah, these guys are ready for prime time. Then you go against another opponent, then you really find out what the level of the challenge is, and it's different. So but it wasn't just those guys, as Mark Helfrich and the coaching staff have talked about. Everybody could have helped more. I think Eastern did a great job of getting guys matched up over the middle against linebackers and things like that. So the Ducks really went with their nickel package a lot in the second half to try to fix some of those matchup issues and work them a little, to become a little less of a disadvantage.
Yeah, the veteran group on the front seven, and it is a very veteran unit, and I think overall there were some really good performances out of that group, but yeah, they probably needed to help out the younger guys in the back a little bit more.
Tyson Coleman was just right there a couple of times for potential sacks. Joe Walker did get one, but they were getting rid of the ball quick too, so it makes it hard to mount to really get to the guy and bring him down. You want to disrupt, but actually getting sacks was going to be tough as quick as they were getting it out.
Yeah, they had some timing plays clearly set up, and once they saw the lineup across the line of scrimmage from them, the snap and then the ball is out of the quarterback's hands. So a lot of people, talking about the lack of a pass rush, and we saw this last year, and why hasn't it been fixed? But as you say, I mean, the quarterback's not even dropping back in some instances. He's catching the snap and throwing the ball, and there's just not enough time to get to him. So Eastern scored points, not completely unexpected. I think 42 was probably more than the Ducks certainly were comfortable getting
Last
up
one
in
is
this
against 2s and 3s, so you could kind of excuse that one. That's against guys who needed to get some reps, and it's some walk-on types and some newcomers to the program that needed to get some reps. So that one's not as much of a red flag as some of the other ones. But But that's not to excuse the fact that there were some veteran guys who played in this defense a long time that have some things they can learn from that tape too.
And I'll say this, from a PR standpoint, if Oregon could have made this score, and I'm not blowing smoke here. I mean, the outcome of this game could have been different.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, Eastern probably could have been kept off the board, maybe one more time. The Ducks could have scored 2 or 3 more times.
Yeah,
I mean,
certainly
this could have been a much bigger margin of victory, but that's just not how that's not how this staff operates. They want to take every advantage they can, especially in a game that really is decided. There's no reason not to play the third string, fourth string guys at the end of a game like this.
And Mark Helfrich is a class guy. With the circumstances of Vernon Adams' departure from the game,
yes,
they would have liked nothing more, I'm sure, than to just pound it in the end zone one last time after that Taj Griffin run. Instead, take a knee. Not the first time Ducks have taken a knee in the opponent's red zone at the end of a game. I'm sure there was a lot of people telling Helf, "Hey, punch it in," but he's a class guy, and he wasn't gonna do that. So. Again, it could have been 80-40, something like that. Still doesn't excuse the 40, but when your goal is to put more points on the board than the other guys, that job was done and then some.
Yeah, I thought about this a little bit after the game, and you start seeing some chatter online. It reminded me of March Madness a little bit, and college football can take a lot from that. It's every week is so important. It's survive and advance.
Right.
I mean, we saw Washington State lose at home to Portland State. They weren't the only. Portland State wasn't the only FCS team to upset. North Dakota, I think, beat Wyoming, which is an FBS team. So this first couple weeks of the season, you have new players. Oftentimes, teams around the country might have new coaches. Maybe the head coach, maybe the whole staff is different. You see weird things. We saw Hail Mary in week 1.
Yeah.
So really, you get out of this with a win. You feel like your team is fairly much intact, and now it's on to Michigan State, which is going to be a huge challenge. We will preview that later this week before we head out to East Lansing. It's the number 5 Ducks in the coaches poll. There are 7 in the AP against the number 7 Spartans in the coaches poll. They are number 5 in the AP. So actually Michigan State, if you go by the AP poll, is the higher ranked team in this one. They're favored slightly in the game. And it should be a great matchup. Michigan State wants to probably avenge last year's game at Autzen Stadium.
Not probably, yeah. They've talked about it.
They got away from them a little bit. And it should be pointed out, that was the Ducks don't trail at the half very often. The only time they've ever won in the last 2+ years, when trailing at the half, was the game against Michigan State. So very important for Oregon to get off to a good start in this one regardless. In the meantime, if you have questions for us, things you want us to discuss on our next episode of Mac and Mose, you can get us on Twitter. I am at McNamara UO. He is at Duck Football. Until next time, we'll see you.
Gets the corner into the end zone for the touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.